So our second video in our Minesweeper code, we're going to look at how to incorporate some of the next features of the game. We'll just quickly look at the game. Should have looked at this earlier in our first video, but we'll just look at an online version. It looks a lot like the old version that was in Windows. Right now I've just kind of incorporated a grid from that first video. I've incorporated a grid, 9 by 9 grid, and it's going to not look the same. This display is showing all of these grid pieces kind of hidden, and the display we had a kind of view of all the bombs automatically that were just showing as red squares. But the next feature in the game to look at is this click feature, where we click into a cell and we see this kind of wall of numbers and this opening up of an area in the game. And so these cells are all showing us as clear, as not having a bomb. They're revealed now. They're not hidden like they are in this state. We'll get to our hidden state later, but we need to figure out how to find this kind of area, and our starting point might be to figure out how to calculate these numbers. So these numbers are just showing how many bombs are adjacent to these squares, and with the bombs kind of revealed now, after I clicked on this one here, we can see what these numbers are doing. So if we look at these blue ones, these are all numbers that are showing that they have one bomb adjacent to them in any of the 8 directions, the up and down, left and right, or diagonal directions that are adjacent to this cell. So all of these ones are counting this bomb as being adjacent. We have another bomb down here that this one is counting. This 2 is counting both this bomb to the right and to the left, and you get the idea. So we'll need to be able to, if I were to click on this cell here, with if this were still hidden and I were to click on it, we can see that we need a way to move through all adjacent positions and tally up how many bombs there are. So we're going to use a loop with a kind of a list of XY coordinates for each position relative to this starting position. And we're going to move around and tally them all up, and we're also just going to be careful that we, like in this case, we haven't dropped off the edge of the grid. And then then what we'll do is just draw that 2 on the screen and just get that part of it working for now. So as it stands, we just have the grid showing us the bombs. We need a way, first of all, to know which cell we've clicked in. Then we'll need a way to move through the adjacent positions and doing the tally and watching out for dropping off the grid. So anything in processing to do with clicks on the screen, we'll start with a mouse pressed function, and we get coordinates in the form of mouse x and mouse y, and these are going to be easy enough to kind of turn into index variables to correspond to our coordinates. You can see my click there in this cell here was at 99.21, and if you remember, the width of the cell was 40. If we were to divide those 2 coordinates by 40, 99 divided by 40 gives us 2 point something. We drop the decimal portion off. This is using Python 2 underneath. And it's kind of Java version, but it's using integer division. So we drop off the decimal portion, and likewise we drop off the decimal portion of the y division, so we get 20 divided by 40, so we get a 0. So we get a 2 and a 0 if we were to do that, which is actually our coordinates for the position within the grid. So just a handy way to do that. So I'll click that same cell, and it says x2 0 1 2 and y0, so it's the y0 position. So that's an easy way for us to translate into our proper coordinates, and we could even make a function for that, which we might do later on. But what we'll do now is we'll just try to get something running. So we want to be able to say click on this cell and start moving around in a list, or move around those 8 positions and get the count. So I'm going to create a list first of all of what those 8 positions are. So they're just going to be coordinates that are offsets from the position that I've clicked on. So I'll start with going I'll start with, I'll just try to do this systematically so I don't mess up and get one that is off by one, or just a repeat or what have you. So those are the first four: up, down, right, left. And then I'll just kind of do the diagonals as well, and I'll just kind of copy them to make it a bit quicker. And I'll do those, and then we'll do we will do, this wasn't as systematic as I wanted, so we'll do those. I think that's correct. Yeah. Okay, so those are the 8 positions that we need, and we'll loop through those. We just need to loop through them, and I'm just going to do it within the actual, I'll leave the list within the actual loop, and I'll just use this syntax here. So it's running off the edge a little bit, but we have a for loop here. The accumulator variable is this pair of variables, and Python's just going to kind of decompose the two coordinates and place them into their respective variables. So we're going to end up with an x of 0, a y of 0 on the first iteration of the loop. On the second iteration, we'll have an x of 0, a y of -1, and so on as we work through the positions. And we can just check to see if each of these is a bomb. So we would just go into the grid and use, first of all, our y variable as our rows. So it's y plus dy, didn't mean for those to be capitals, and x plus dx. And we could print out whether that's a bomb or not. Now we will get an error from this. So if I click down here, we'll see one true. So I clicked on, I think it was this cell here. I clicked on this one, and I'll do it again, but it's a little hard to see. But so one cell was a true, and the rest are all false because I was moving around. These are all non-bombs, and this was a bomb. Now, of course, if I click up here, I should go off of the grid, and it's gonna cause us some problems. So it doesn't seem to be causing the problem I was expecting. So it may cause sometimes there's our index error, and I expected an index error up on the top as well, but not sure. Well, what I'll do is I'll first deal with what the index error the way I expected it to. I like to just create just a quick function that takes an x and a y coordinate. I call it inbounds or on grid or something like that, and I'm just going to return a true or a false if it's within the range it's supposed to be. So the x coordinate should be greater than or equal to 0. It should be less than the width. The y coordinate should be greater than or equal to 0, and should be less than the width. Remember, the width is not the width. Sorry, I didn't include my coordinates here. I could make this a constant for the number of rows and the number of columns. Why don't I do that? So this is the number of rows that we're going to create, and this is the number of columns, and I'll do these as constants as well. And I had done 9 for those. So 9 and 9. And down here I can check to make sure that I was within the right number of columns, and right here it's just handy so that we can, let me just make sure I didn't make any I've messed up something in my list comprehension. There we go. Still not right. Tile for n in range columns. Okay, so what did I do there? I added a constant for rows and columns. They were 9s. I kind of just replaced the 9s here with the appropriate variable. So I'm looping through a number of rows in my kind of outer loop within the list comprehension, and the inner loop is generating the number of columns. So this kind of inner list that gets copied into each row contains 9 columns, and there's 9 rows of those. But down here within my inbounds function, I'm just checking to make sure that x is within the right range. It's between 0 and up to, but not including the 9. So it's going from 0 to 8 for the number of columns, 0 to 8 for the number of rows. If that's true, if x and y are within those bounds, this returns false. There's no else statement here, but if it doesn't return true, then it drops down through this if statement, and then it returns false. So it's effectively like an else statement there. This is going to return either a true or a false. So I can check now. I can check in here. I can first check before I do anything else if I'm in bounds. And I would do that by passing in my new x coordinate using my offset and using my new y coordinate. Okay, so if this is if it's in bounds, then it will print out this variable, and we'll print out true or false. And so we shouldn't get that index error when we click down here. And we need to tally these. So we're clicking somewhere and we want to count how many trues we get to find out how many bombs we have. So if I set my sum to 0 here, and if I find each time and I find out if this is a bomb. Remember, this is a property of the tile object, so if this is set to true, if it is in bounds and it's a bomb, because bomb.bomb is equal to true if it's a bomb, then I'll tally that as a 1, and at the end I will print the total, print s. So it has to be a bomb for this to be true, otherwise it's false. Remember, they're set by default. These properties, are set by default to false, and I open up a number of them to true. Okay, so I'll click here, and we should see a 1, or perhaps a 0. This happened last time when I was making this. I'm still actually not sure that there isn't some other mistake in there from that previous non-index error. So I'm just going to start printing out more stuff because I'm not sure what's going on. So I want to know, first of all, what my x and y variables are. It's a little bit of tracing. Something is not doing what I had been thinking it was doing. Then I loop through using my x and y. And you know what? I should just trace that too. So just start tracing whatever you can. And eventually something will hopefully stand out as being and we'll print out s. Not the best. Processing is not the best for tracing. I mean, we don't have a lot of room down here, and we can't drop down into the interpreter. But anyways, I clicked here, so that should be x of 1 and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, y of 5. So let's just check the coordinates first. 1 and 5, so that's correct, and then it's looping around, and it should have found one bomb, and that was when dx was 0 and dy was -1. So on the second one, it should have found a bomb, which it didn't. So that's not what I expected to see. So where's my error? Y. You'll notice that inbounds is x, y, because that's how I created the variable. I have an x come in and a y. And grid is yx because we are using the rows, they are y's. So I still haven't seen it. 0, 1. Oh, well, this certainly is wrong. That probably is all that we have to deal with. So we click here and we see an S of 1. So this line here didn't add 1 to it. I didn't notice that earlier. I'm going to click over here. I should see a 3, so that's correct. And that's all I can really 3 as well. So it looks like it's calculating correctly. My mistake, I was just not there was no assignment there. So all right, so we can get rid of all those print statements. And I think it would be useful at this point to turn this into a function, because it's probably I mean, we'd want to be able to use this as a function at some point. I'm going to just go one step further, and I'm going to assign a new property to the tile cell, so that each cell has a new property. So currently they just have bomb properties. I'm going to assign them you can call whatever makes sense to you. I might give it a number, name it number or label perhaps, and if when it starts out it will have nothing, or a none, Python none, and if I click on it and find out how many bombs are adjacent, I'm just going to change it to that number. So in other words, I'm going to come up here, I'm going to call it self.label, and I'll set it to none, and down here I will assign it the value of S. So this position within our grid.label is now going to be assigned the value S, and I will do it only I'll do it only if it is greater than 0. I'll give it a number, and we'll just see something that starts to look a little bit more like the actual game. So if we get a value that's greater than 0, we're going to assign it to this label, and what we'll do is we'll start have to do a little more work in here obviously to get this drawing everything we need to draw, but draw number, the number of adjacent bombs. So how do I do that? Using processing, I used the text command. The text command draws something on the screen using the x and y coordinates. So if there's a value assigned in there, we're gonna start to see. I haven't quite worked it out yet, but you can see that we have these x's here. They're being drawn here. Let me just change the color so that we can see all of them. Just be very careful when you start drawing new things on the screen for processing, because it's easy to forget to modify fills and kind of either lay a rectangle over top of what you're drawing, or draw something on top of everything else but draw it using the same fill color so that you don't end up seeing it. So here I have a green fill, and I can see my x's, but it seems like I don't have any x's down here. I've lost my last row of x's. But what's really happening, you have to just think about how we draw and what the coordinates are. When we draw a rectangle, our rectangle is drawn from the upper left. So if we draw this red rectangle here with whatever the coordinates are, then we have this is 0, 40, 80. So we have x 80 here. We'll go up to this this coordinate here. So 0, 40, 80. So we draw this rectangle here at 80, and y equals 40. And the text command to draw this this x here is the text draws from a kind of a bottom left corner. So this x here is corresponding to this tile here. The x for this tile is off the screen. It's above the screen, because the y coordinate is the bottom of the text, so it's appearing right in this spot here. So we need to move it down. We need to move it down maybe almost half a tile, and we need to move it over maybe half a tile. So we can do that several ways. I could just start fiddling with numbers. I could be best to maybe make use of my width property or variable, and so I'll just do it half down, and that's pretty close, so I'm going to leave it like that. So we see all the x variables there, and what I really want to draw is the property for the number of bombs, and I want to check first if that property actually exists. So I'm going to go back up to my, I have my tile object already, so I'm going to check to see if that label is not equal to none. Remember, I set them all by none. If they're not none, then they're a number, in which case I'm going to grab that number and throw it on the screen. I can't remember if I'm going to have to turn that number into a string for processing to deal with or not. Okay, so we're seeing them appear on the screen and just in the wrong spot. So I think I just have to fix, let me just see that again. So I'm going to click here, should see a 2, and somehow we've ended up assigning the 2 into the wrong, or we're drawing it in the wrong spot, and seems to be up 1 and over 1. So I think in my assignment, right, so here's the problem. I should have assigned this into the actual grid position that we clicked on. Okay, so in other words, I was assigning this tally. I tallied up the number of bombs. I should have assigned that into the actual tile that we're working with at X and Y, not at the last position, which was up 1 and left 1, the last position that was left over from our loop. So these should appear correctly now. This is the thing about programming, is that you'll make a mistake earlier, and when you start clicking it and might start thinking that your numbers are placed incorrectly, and forget that you might have not realized you'd made a mistake earlier in assignment of the position. So it's a frustrating thing sometimes, but if you just kind of remember to think back to other possibilities and to trace things as best you can. That's a 3, and that looks correct because we have 0, 1, 2, 3 bombs in those locations. A 3 there, a 3 there, a 1 there, which appears correct, a 1. So this is working correctly. We're seeing all the bombs being labeled up properly. We would just have to get the kind of, and these ones are nothing's appearing here because there's no bombs adjacent to this position. So I think I'm going to stop here, and then we're going to pick up with the recursive feature of opening up this whole space. Like, for instance, I would click here, and all these numbers would appear and kind of form this kind of wall. This one would be off, and we would see this whole kind of wall space open up. And we'll do that in the next video.